everyone, welcome to the absolute last lesson that you will do in this class. Yay, get excited. I'm also excited because it's the absolute last video that I'll have to record. And it's called Let's Be Critical, providing critical evaluation of peers, supervisors, and subordinates. We do this one last for a couple reasons. First, it's one of the more higher order assignments that you'll have to do because it's going to combine a couple things that we've learned across the semester. The second thing is that it doesn't require peer review, so we can do it as one of the absolute last things. Because in the assignment, what you're going to do is you're going to provide critical feedback to one of your peers in your work group, using the work group as a context for writing the sort of critical feedback letter. And we all know that it would be sort of above your pay grade to write that and then show it to those people. I don't want to get into that kind of drama. So we're going to write it, it's going to remain anonymous, and then you're just going to turn it into me. We'll talk more about the assignment at the end. What this is providing critical feedback, again, to supervisors or subordinates or your peers. And we all hope that when you go out into the workforce one day, you're going to be in a position where you are going to sort of, hopefully be in charge of, any number of people that work on a project or a team or on the farm or whatever the case is. And being able to provide them, feedback in a way that is critical and helpful is going to help them be better employees to you and to help you be a better supervisor to them. And this isn't something that I feel like you're going to get anywhere else in life, so we're going to do it now. Alright, so our objectives for the day is to prepare you to provide meaningful, tactful, helpful, and critical evaluations of your peers, subordinates, and supervisors. And then the second thing is just to identify the various types or formats that evaluation can take. Not can take, but can take. Super spell check, what's that? Anyhow, let's do the second one first. Okay, here are some formats that feedback can come in. These aren't groundbreaking. They can be really informal, sort of on-the-job situations where you see somebody doing something really well or really poorly, and you pull them aside and you say, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? Or I noticed, this is happening, what's the trouble? That kind of feedback is fantastic because it gives it right at the time that they need it, and it's most impactful then. You can give it verbally, or you can do it in writing, which is the writing class, so of course what we're going to focus on. Whenever you do a written evaluation, it typically tends to be more formal, and it typically tends to be not ad hoc, like what I described before. Written reports tend to come, maybe once a year, once every 6 months, or once a quarter. And they can take on, usually one of two forms. They can either come in like a form, if your business requires you to fill out, like an evaluation form for your employees, or just a more letter style. And a lot of times what will happen, if you work in an organization that does evaluations, is, the supervisor will write the letter, kind of write out his or her main points, and then you'll have a meeting and you'll sort of go over the points and allow people to respond and have a discussion. But it sort of starts with the writing, and this is the writing course, that's what we're going to learn about. Another thing that these evaluations are is they serve as written record. A lot of times, like especially when I worked at the the University of Florida and then here at Tech, I get reviewed annually. We look at the points in the letter or the narrative, and then we agree on them, and then I sign them, and then it goes into my permanent file. And that's great because usually I do a good job, usually. And if another employer comes along later, another supervisor takes the position, they can read back over those and say, oh, hey, this is Adam, and he does a great job. So whenever it comes in business letter format, it usually comes in the format that I've got laid out here, which is, there's usually an introductory paragraph explaining the context, 1 to 3 paragraphs of supporting material, which is just, your main points, and then a closing paragraph that reiterates the main points, closes with any sort of action that's going to be taken as a result of this evaluation. It's a business letter, standard block left format, just like you've done a couple times across this semester. The difference here is the content. Whoa, look at that segue. Speaking of content, critical evaluation is concerned with a couple things. The first one is content, like what goes into it. So what do you say? What specific instances have occurred? And then whenever you talk about this content, like these things that have occurred, you want to always start with I. Like I have noticed, I have observed, I have seen. We'll talk about why we do that later. But for the short run, it helps you be issue focused and specific. We'll come back to this. Critical evaluation is also concerned with tone. It's not often what you say, it's how you say it. This carries over, of course, in your writing as well. So if I were to say, Elizabeth, you're such a great student, would you believe me? I don't know, maybe not, but probably not. And so the same thing comes across in your writing. So you want to make sure that your tone is conveying the message that you hope to convey. And again, your content won't be received well if your tone is not appropriate. And the purpose of evaluation, like as a practice in business, is to help somebody improve. And if your tone is all messed up and confrontational or angry, then no one's ever going to improve. You might as well just fire them. So, all right. Timing is the third thing. You can do it what we call ASAP, as soon as possible. That's kind of the more informal sort of, talking about that we talked about earlier, where you kind of pull them aside and say, hey, you could do this better. Hey, you're doing a great job, whatever the case is. Or as soon as reasonable. And that's really what we're more dealing with in our context in this class and of this assignment. It's not always an option to give feedback all the time, so we try to build it in at regular intervals. And like I said, it could be, if you're in a probationary period, it could be the first 30 days, first 90 days, maybe, once a quarter, once 6 months, once a year, so on and so forth. All right, let's move into the key points for being critical. I don't know why that's so funny to me. There's 10 of them. Stay with me. They're pretty straightforward. You're going to look at these and you're going to say, gosh, Adam, everybody should do that. But the fact of the matter is that people don't. A lot of my supervisors, they've all been great. But, looking back, not all of them have sort of followed this advice. And I think it probably could have gone better had they done this. And so what I'm saying is that if you take these key points, take them to heart and remember them for later in life, when you have to do this sort of thing, you'll be way better at this than what your people are used to. All right, so step one, be information specific, issue focused, and based on observations. And all this is to say that we want to be as factual and objective as possible. What most people do is they give praise and criticism, and those aren't being information specific, issue focused, and based on observations. Praise and criticism are personal judgments about effort or outcome, and so that's not like, that right off the bat is bad because I'm judging you, not necessarily talking about things that are sort of concrete and tangible. Praise and criticism are also general and vague, like, oh, hey, you did a great job, or oh man, you suck at life. Like, these things aren't helpful in terms of helping people get better. The third thing is that praise and criticism are focused on the person and based on opinions. And so, like, they're personal judgments. So it doesn't say, Adam, I've noticed that your, behavior here, is X or could improve or whatever the case. It makes a judgment against me. It's not, Adam, your behavior was this, or Adam, your actions did this. It's, Adam, you are, this thing, lazy or, incompetent or whatever the case is. Hopefully you all would agree with that. So anyway, so what constructive feedback is it's focused on a person's observable behavior and is specific. And we'll talk more about this. All right, so step two, and this seems like it should be, a pretty normal thing, but a lot of times people, when they deliver information, they kind of beat around the bush because they're not comfortable with, providing feedback. They're not comfortable with sort of being in a supervisor role. But if we approach it from the sense that we're all here to help, the employee get better, then that makes it a little bit easier, I think. And so you just need to, work on being straightforward with delivering your points, whether they're negative or positive, and just give it in an honest and caring sort of manner. It's always good to start with positive things, and then move on to negative things, and then, hopefully end with the positive thing. We call this the Oreo method. It's real scientific, Oreo. I don't know why they say, the negative's in the middle, and the negative would be the cream. I mean, that's the good part. But I guess it all depends. Some people are like the crackers. Anyway, that matters. The best part is the milk. Shout out to the dairy people. All right, that's enough of that. So number 3, avoid need to phrases. And so because the reason is that they only imply that something didn't go well or that something needs to be done. And so my example here is, Jane, you need to get your things in on time. And you need to use the spell check. If I'm, giving actual constructive feedback and want Jane to take action and change her behavior, it's way better if I don't leave it to implications, if I don't just imply. So it's better to just be direct. Like, Jane, you need, please use spell check to prove your documents before you post them on the website, because you're making us all look bad. You shouldn't do that last part. But do you see the difference there? One just says, Jane, you kind of need to do these things. The other one is much more direct. It says, Jane, please use spell check. And it gives her like a specific thing that she can do to improve. That's sort of the key here. This also always reminds me of that guy from Office Space. Where he's like, yeah, I'm going to need you to work on Saturday, or whatever he says. Fascinating fact about Office Space. Remember the guy that burned down the building that was like, my swim line. They painted the stapler red so that it would stand out in the movie. At the time, Swinline didn't actually make a red stapler, but because of the movie, they brought them into production. This is the fact that I learned on the internet. It may or may not be true. Number 4, be sincere and avoid giving mixed messages. So this is more sort of, straight to the point. Don't beat around the bush, don't be afraid to give feedback, sort of things. So say what you mean, but say it with care and respect. And avoid using yes, but constructions. And so this would be like, yes, you're doing a great job, but there's the other things. Because what it does is it sends a mixed message, and whenever you hear feedback that starts with you do this, but you tend to discount everything that came before but, as though that was just there to butter me up for the real message, which is this negative thing. And that's not the case, because most of the time, whenever you get feedback, or evaluation or whatnot, you're going to get both, because you probably do some things really well, and there are probably some things that you need to work on. And whenever you are giving feedback to somebody, you need to split those things up. So you wouldn't want to say, you do a really great job with X, but Y is not so good, because I'm going to discount everything that came before but. So what you need to do is split them up and say, X is a thing that I can tell that you really excel at, and then talk about that, and then say, I have noticed that one place you can improve is Y. And it's subtle, but those things, it splits them up so they're two different thoughts, and we understand that, oh, I do one thing really well, and I can feel good about that, and there's this other thing that I need to improve on. And it doesn't cause you to only focus on the negative. All right, number 5, express appreciation, not praise when evaluating. Praise is general and vague, and it's a personal judgment. But whenever you use praise and specific examples, it somehow becomes appreciation. This math may or may not hold up. But so, if I was like, John, you're awesome, good job, what does that help them with? Nothing at all. But if I come back and I combine it with specific examples, of how, like specific, observable, tangible behaviors, and I say things like, John, your handling of all the processing work while Sue did the callbacks made for an efficient effort and showed good teamwork. Everything you did was accurate as well. Thanks so much, you're a baller. Anyhow, nobody actually talks like that, but, hopefully, hopefully you don't talk like that. But, you can see that if I'm John, I feel really good now, and I know what I'm supposed to feel good about. Oh, this guy, he praised me, I did a good job, but he also gave me specific examples, so I know that I did the processing work well, and they appreciate accuracy. So anyhow, so that gives them much more constructive feedback. Number 6, in negative feedback situations, express concern. Concern for the person being evaluated communicates a sense of importance and sincerity to the message, whereas tones like anger, frustration, disappointment, or sarcasm undercut your attempt to provide useful feedback. And remember, the idea here is that we want the person to improve. And so if I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, if they can visually see my disappointment, or sense my sarcasm, then they're not going to take the content well. They're not going to improve. There's that roadblock that you've thrown up by being a jerk, and they're not going to get any better. So the best way that they've found, in psychological tests or whatnot, to approach somebody that's not doing a good job is to come to them and say, I'm concerned, for you in this job, because of, these negative, problems that you're having. And the goal of that is to create awareness. One, they may not know that they're doing a bad job. So like you come to them and you say, I'm concerned, I want you to do a good job. Here are some things that you're not doing well, specifically. And hopefully it creates awareness, okay? And so they think, oh, I had no idea I was doing a really poor job, and so, hopefully they'll improve. And the other thing is that, because you've expressed concern for the individual, they no longer feel like, oh man, I'm, under a lot of pressure because they think that I'm a bad person. They feel like they've got somebody that's there to help them in the game, that you've come to them, you've expressed concern. They think, oh, this person is going to help me get better at my job. This is assuming, of course, that they want to get better at their job. That's an argument for another day. We're working with people that we hope want to get better. Number 7, of course, state observations, not interpretations. This kind of goes back to that same, don't give personal judgments. So observations are like, behaviors or tangible things that you can see. Such as, I noticed you don't often meet deadlines. Or I noticed that, you frequently turn things in late. I noticed that you drive the tractor while intoxicated. Like, those are observations. Like, these are things that happened that the person, and this is the important thing, that the person can't contest. They'd be like, yes, I was late on these things. This is a fact. What you don't want to give is interpretations that sort of, like, are you internalizing what they've done and then spitting it back at them with your judgment. Things like, you can't meet deadlines, you loser, or you're an alcoholic. Those are, those are things, that imply judgment. So you just need to tell what you've noticed, not what you think of it, And so if it's an example of you and your group, like, you wouldn't say, Johnny is not a productive member of the group because he's lazy and doesn't appreciate, the effort that the rest of us put in. Like, that's not critical, feedback. You would say something to the effect of, Johnny, I hope we don't have a Johnny in the class. Johnny wasn't able to turn in assignments. Johnny didn't reply to emails, within the 24-hour time frame that we had established. Johnny was absent for 3/4 of the semester. Like, these are all things that we can look at and say, yes, this happened. And they're more factual and not judgmental. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Number 8 is really important because this is the thing that people do. Like, speak only for yourself. If you are somebody's supervisor and you come to them and you say, the team feels this way or we feel this way, like, it makes you a weenie. Like, it basically says, I am not a strong enough person to take on my supervisor role and say, these are things that I have observed, and this is, what I want you to do. It sort of like falls back on, this sort of group mentality that, like, oh, it's not just me. Everybody thinks the same way, Don't be that guy. The other thing, the actual important thing here is that it makes, the individual in question feel ganged up on. They're like, oh, well, the whole team doesn't like me, or the whole team, feels that I'm bad at my job. It puts them on the defensive, which again isn't, helpful in terms of helping them improve. And it makes them feel ganged up on. And they maybe feel that everyone's talking about them, and then boom, you've created sort of like a hostile, unpleasant place to work where there's, intrigue and talking behind water coolers and all this good stuff. So just come right out and say, like, I'm the supervisor, these are my observations, and you and I are gonna work through this, okay? Great, super. All right, number 9, know your come from. And then for some reason I have 3. Oh, no, that's right, the quotations at the end. Anyway, so think about, this is sort of a reflection thing for you to do. Your emotional situation, from where you're coming from whenever you do this evaluating. Are you doing it out of obligation because you have to do this once a year? Are you doing it out of anger or frustration or disappointment because this person just can't get it together, and so, you're having this talk, because you're just, you've got to do something, you don't know what to do, and this seems like a thing to do. Or, hopefully, are you doing it out of concern, or are you doing it out of, caring because you want them to succeed in this job? Hopefully it's the latter two. If you're not, then maybe this isn't the thing to do right now. Okay, number 10, ask how you can be supportive. This is the best thing to do at the end of the talk. Like if you're looking for a way to sort of close out your talk, talk about the positive things, talk about the things that they can improve on, and then ask them, A, what they think they can do to improve, but then B, also how can you be of help to help them, improve. And again, this shows that you're concerned and that you want them and the team to succeed, because typically you work in like a team environment. And then ask them to think about how they need to be supported. And what this does is it, one, it sort of pushes some of the work back off on them, but it also sort of, it makes them accountable for their success, because they need to now think about, like, go home and think about, all right, well, like, this guy's concerned about me. I need to do a better job, clearly. How can I improve? And so they have to spend time thinking about that in order to make it to the step where they think, how can, my boss help me improve? And then, have them come back, either in writing or have another meeting or whatnot and talk about, how you can help them improve. And then everybody's put thought into it, and everybody's sort of taken sort of ownership of their own, ability, or not ability. You know what I'm trying to say. All right. Whoa, that was the end. How about that? That was a pretty quick one. So let's look at your assignment just while we're here. Let's see here. That's the one. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to write, again, in letter format, pick one of your group members, and then what you're going to do is you're going to write to me. So address your letter to this, this address right here, and write about, again, only one of your peers in your group, and then sort of critique them, as though, and this is kind of the stretch for this assignment. This is the only way that I know how to make it work. Write it to me as though I'm your supervisor, and you're, sort of critiquing your peer. So give me constructive feedback about, their behavior in the group. And it would, it doesn't have to, you don't have to pick like the group member that is really terrible and then focus on them and write like a really nasty letter. You can pick the one that, is fantastic. And usually most letters should include things that people did well and things that people can improve on, and so do all this, and then turn it in. You'll submit it via Scholar, just in case you're worried, like at no point will I be sharing these with the members of your group. In fact, this assignment will be due after we finish our class meetings. So you won't even ever see these people again, at least in this class. Again, your letter should be 3 to 5 paragraphs. It can be 1 page. It can go over and become 2 pages if you want to. It's not necessary, but if you find that you run over on the 2nd page, that's also okay. So if you have any questions, I'll talk to you in class. Thanks for listening, and glad this is the last video. All right, cheer. That's just how it went down.